Namaskaram everyone, welcome. Today we'll be discussing everything about spatial awareness in XR. As we all know, technology is advancing, and so does our understanding of how spatial awareness works, how it transforms the way we interact with digital world is also changing. So we'll discuss the profound kind of an impact that spatial awareness brings on our digital experiences. And for that, we have Drew Pearson. He's the CEO of XR DOJO, which specializes in the production of AR, VR, XR, MR, AI, ML, and providing the whole 360-degree video experiences. He's also the CTO of The Gridz, and the state-of-the-art wireless VR rig is loaded with over 125 of the top VR games and experiences. So, Drew, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So before we dive into any of the questions that I have for you today, can we just first touch upon what spatial awareness is and what it means for the XR?
Yeah, so I like to think of spatial awareness as kind of the magic ingredient that bridges the gap between our physical world and the virtual realm. It's what gives us a feeling of truly being there. When you're in VR and you reach out to grab a virtual object, and it actually feels like it's right there in your hand. That's spatial awareness at work. It's not just about making things look pretty. It's about creating experiences that feel truly immersive and real, and and you're not just a passive observer, like watching a video or reading a book or something like that. You're actually performing the actions. For example, say you're doing a training exercise where you're having to test, say you're a mechanic and you're trying to rebuild an engine. You can actually pick up the pieces and put them together and follow steps. You can get prompts and that kind of stuff. And it just really engages you fully with all your senses and gives you muscle memory. And just, like I said, it's that bridge that merges the two.
Yeah, and it also implies kind of a profound connection between the user and the environment. While we are, talking about spatial awareness and XR, so how is this shaping the way we interact with XR, and what are the implications for user engagement?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to user engagement, the spatial awareness really plays a huge role. It's what keeps us coming back for more. When we feel like we're truly part of the experience, when we can move around, we can interact, we can pick things up, just like the real world, that's where the engagement really skyrockets. Even kids, like my daughter, I would put the headset on her and let her play around, and they really pick it up super fast, because they haven't been through the high school, college, and you get used to lectures and videos and that kind of stuff. They're used to playing with blocks and really interacting with the world, and that's where kind of the spatial awareness comes in, is that you can basically do what you do in the real world. If you go make a cup of coffee, you can actually pour it, instead of just watching a video and kind of thinking about how you would do it. You can physically interact with the space.
Yeah. So
and like oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Yes.
I was just going to say, like gaming, for instance, game developers can create worlds that feel incredibly lifelike and immersive. You're not just sitting on the couch pushing buttons, like on the PlayStation or Xbox or something like that. You're actually inside the game. So, if you're exploring a dungeon, different lighting can actually trigger certain emotions and feelings. If you're battling monsters, you're actually really doing it there, zombies surrounding you, all that stuff. And then, from there, it can also be gaming, but, like I was mentioning earlier, you can also do training simulations and virtual meetings. It's really weird when you're in a meeting, I used to do a lot of stuff in alt space, and it's really cool when you actually walk up to somebody, you actually feel that kind of sixth sense that you're actually connecting with a person, and you can even get the things like, if you get too close, you can actually feel like, the personal boundaries in there kick in. So it's really exciting.
So as we are also talking about the user engagement, are there any breakthroughs in spatial computing that that might redefine how users are engaging with the immersive content?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest ones is, the spatial mapping and tracking technology. We've had sensors and stuff like that for a while, but it's typically been inside the headset. What's really cool now is with these next generation goggles is that we have the pass through. So you can switch from the virtual world and then have the pass through where you can actually see the actual world and have these virtual objects in there. It's also we've gotten really good at having hand tracking. So it's almost like a sign language for each of the systems that you've got to learn a little bit. But once you do, it's really, like I mentioned earlier, it's really magical. When you do it for the first time. I remember one of the first things that I did was kind of go on a roller coaster, and just that feeling where you would go and actually we had some developers that would like white knuckle on the chair while they're going, and then when you can actually have experience, like if you like we do product visualization for sales reps to help sell products, and some of them are not hard, like when you're going to meet a customer like in their house or at a trade show per se, you can't bring all your products with you, right? So but we built one of the tools we built was for a blinds company, and so what you could do is tap at the top left of a window and the bottom right, and then a blind would appear. And you could actually walk up to it, see the textures. You could change the colors. You could even add drapes and curtains and that kind of stuff to really get a sense of what it's going to look like in the customer's home. And then we even added snapshot camera functionality to where, say, you're visualized as blind and you have the customer stand beside it, that you can actually take a snapshot, and then that gives a great leave behind for the salesperson to send back. It's a value-added touch point that the customer can also use to share with their friends, family, that kind of stuff, to get opinions about, what do you think? They may not be there at the house when they're doing the demo, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's just that adding that actual tracking in there and being able to place things in your actual environment is just, that's been the biggest breakthrough.
Yeah, let's also, as you mentioned, let's also discuss a bit of the development side. So, what hurdles do developers face while they are creating spatially aware XR experiences? How are these then challenges overcome?
Yeah, it definitely comes with its fair share of challenges. One of the big ones is getting that spatial mapping and tracking just right. As over the years, I've been doing this for 12 years now. So very early on, it was really hit or miss sometimes if it was going to track just right. But now with these new headsets, I mean, it's really pretty right on. But what you want to do is add in, we're working to add in more artificial intelligence and machine learning, so that not only does it track the space, but it can also contextually tell you what the objects are. So for instance, if there's a window, you could recognize that, or a door, or a coffee table, a TV setup, a couch, those kind of things. And so, that's really been a challenge, figuring out and fine tuning those systems to actually recognize things properly, so that, a wall isn't say you have a flat wall that's all white, that it's not categorized as like a ceiling, that kind of thing. Also, lighting conditions can be a challenge. A lot of our apps will actually have a detection of the lighting in the room, so that if it's too dark, we can alert the user to turn on more lights and that kind of thing, because of the various technologies that are used to do all that nice spatial tracking. They do require light. We have found a workaround. I've actually gotten the headset to work using an infrared booster. We'll have one or two of those in the room. It can be completely dark, because we've done tilt brush experiences where people can draw and paint and stuff in VR, but it was in like say like an event where they had like music playing, they had people, it's more like a nightclub experience, and we were able to pull it off with that. So just making sure that you can account for those things. But you know, with every year, and actually every 6 months or so, we're just seeing bigger and bigger increases in space, and it's getting easier. It's still hard. And the other thing is the performance optimization. We'll get these 3D models, and sometimes the 3D artists will add too many polygons, or the textures will be too big. And so what we try to do is at the beginning of a project, really do a rapid prototyping to where we're working hand to hand, developers and designers, to make sure that we're able to deliver really fast experiences that are smooth and as you would expect. Because if you're in virtual reality and something starts glitching, that really kind of messes with your head. So I think those are really the two biggest challenges.
Yeah, let's also discuss a bit of the design part, as it is really integral, and also as it creates more impact when it's aligned with human perception and behavior. So, how are designers incorporating kind of human-centric principles, you can say, to enhance the spatial awareness in these XR experiences?
Yeah, definitely designing XR experiences that resonate with human perception and behavior is key to creating these immersive and engaging virtual worlds. So, designers are really taking a deep dive into understanding how humans perceive and interact with our environment. It was one thing where we're building websites and print materials and that kind of stuff. That's really a totally different mindset when you're going into these types of projects. So one of the ways we're doing this is by leveraging the principles of embodied cognition, which is just a fancy way of saying that we're designing XR experiences that make you feel like you're really there, physically interacting with objects and spaces. So for example, instead of just clicking a button to pick up a virtual object, you might actually reach out and grab it. And then we could have pop-ups that actually come out of the object, in real time, giving them instructions or more information about what that object is and how you can interact with it. There are also things that you've got to take into consideration is just the environment itself, making sure that your virtual content fits seamlessly into the real world. So, for example, with the blinds project that we worked on, we actually had to where when you clicked on the window, that not only did the blind appear, but it didn't appear over the window, if that makes sense. It actually would inset into the wall. We would inset it based on the, I guess, the depth of the product. And so it actually looks like it was sunken into the environment versus just laying out on top of it. And, you can see the edges and that kind of stuff. Also, we are also taking into account, accessibility and inclusivity. We're trying to make sure that, it's usable and enjoyable for everyone, regardless of their abilities or backgrounds. So, for example, we don't want to have anything that's just voice activated. We want to have a text component to where someone that may be hearing impaired can actually see it as well. I mean, these are things that we've done on web in the past, but sometimes in these scenarios, it can be even more important. Also, the hand tracking has been really beneficial for that as well, to make it more accessible.
As we are also talking about interactivity and user engagement, how is XR enhancing it through spatial understanding, and what role does user interfaces actually play in this?
Yeah, I mean, XR is really, or extended reality is all about blurring the lines between the digital and physical worlds, right? And one of the ways it's doing that is by leveraging spatial understanding to enhance the interactivity and user engagement. So spatial understanding, it's basically about how XR applications perceive and interact with the physical world around us. We're doing it all the time. As we're driving, you're subconsciously know when a car is beside you or around you, you're looking around, but you kind of have that sense. And so really what spatial, computing is all about is giving your headset or whatever device it is that same understanding of your environment. And so like imagine you're using an augmented reality app on your phone. It might use your device's camera and sensors to understand the layout of your room. You can overlay digital content on top of it. That's really spatial understanding in action. And when it comes to interactivity and user engagement, spatial understanding plays a huge role. It allows users to interact with virtual objects and environments in a way that feels natural and intuitive. It's not I mean, it's not as fake as what you might see on a video. You might question it, but if you're actually interacting with it and feeling it, it feels real. Instead of using a keyboard or a mouse to navigate through a virtual world, now you're using hand gestures, or you've got voice commands, or you've got the controllers that you can use now, and it just really grabs users' attention and keeps them going. And then you can also use them to navigate between different virtual environments, interact with objects, access menus, options, so really making sure that your user interface is well designed, is really critical for enhancing the interactivity and engagement in your products or your experiences that you're making. So, if the UI is clunky, that's why we do a lot of user testing, because what we develop, and we use may not be what everybody experiences. And it's actually really, really interesting when you get new users, or especially people that aren't in the space or have never experienced augmented or virtual reality before. It's really interesting to see, where they start, how they pick up the controllers, what they're expecting to do. And so the more of that we can do, really helps us make a smoother experience overall. And because if someone gets in there and they can't figure it out, if it's too complicated, then they abandon it. We've learned that with websites. If you've got some kind of a form and you get more than 5 to 7 questions, people abandon it. It's just too much work. So one of the best interfaces I've ever seen, and that whenever I do demos, the easiest one for me to demo is Google Tilt Brush. Like literally within 20 seconds, I can have someone, I'm like, here's the controller, hold this one up, use the knob to spin the tools, take this one, point at it, and then I have them pull the trigger and move their hand, and they're like, okay, I got it. And it's just remarkable. So really that testing, is very important to make sure you have a smooth experience overall.
Yeah, let's also discuss a bit about ethical considerations, which might arise when we are talking in the context of spatial XR. How can we ensure responsible development and the use of it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a extremely important topic. Especially with all the privacy issues and stuff like that, and making sure that we're being mindful of including everybody in these. So, for example, one of my friends was going into a metaverse, and he was looking for an avatar that matched his certain hairstyle. He sometimes you can't have the right color for skin. You don't have the different hairstyles for different ethnicities or cultures. Some might want to have a turban, or they might want to have some kind of a hat or special thing that as we're building these systems, we've got to make sure that we aren't isolating people. Also, we've got to keep in mind the as I mentioned earlier, the privacy. So as we're creating these environments and we're taking in all this data, we've got to make sure that we're running this stuff by people that, hey, can we use this information? If we do an app that maps out a room and creates say a 360 or like a 3D model from it, it might do this Gaussian splatting or one of these other techniques that can actually scan the environment. We've got to be critical that we ask permission for that. They might have sensitive stuff in their room, and they don't want you recording it and just having it and be able to share it and have unauthorized people access it, that kind of thing. So definitely being upfront about that. Another thing we've learned, we did do some kind of a play on some horror experiences with storytelling, and we learned pretty quickly that it's also important to warn users if there are going to be experiences that could trigger certain phobias. So for instance, we had spiders in one, and then we had a guy get into the goggles, and he got to that part and he threw it off. He was like, "What did you just do?" Because um, VR, especially VR, really ties into that. They call it the lizard part of your brain, to where you really feel real, like you're there. And especially if you get really realistic with the graphics, I remember we were playing Fallout, and one of my developers, he got in there, and one of the first things, like this giant cockroach ran up his leg. He started like hitting at it, and they took the headset off, because there wasn't a warning. And so, you know, letting people know that something could trigger a phobia, we found that that helps, because like before, we would take people to experience for like, hey, do you have any phobias around tight spaces or spiders or rats or heights? I personally deal with a fear of heights, and so there are certain games where I get in there, I'm just like, oh wow. Like I had one where I actually had to flap my arms and fly. I was like, I just really couldn't make myself do it. So um, those kind of things are definitely points that we try to incorporate into ours. Also safety, like Pokemon Go, they have warnings that, make sure you don't go into, off limits areas or places that could be dangerous and that kind of stuff, because they have a virtual map of the world, but they can't see in real time, what's happening around there. So they consciously remind you to be aware of your surroundings and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, lastly, according to you, what is going to be the future of spatial awareness in XR, and what are the emerging technologies that, hold the key to pushing the boundaries of spatial awareness in XR even further?
Yeah, really, in my opinion, spatial AI and machine learning are by far the biggest emerging technologies. What I've experienced over the last year has just been amazing. I thought we were 5 years out from where we are now. It's pretty awesome. Also, because I think one of the biggest things with it, not only does it help us identify things in the real world and help us really play off of those different elements, but almost every project I've ever worked on, we pitch. We always dream big, right? We want to do, say, unlimited budget. We want to make this thing amazing, and every project you got to start paring it down to fit the budget, right? So what's exciting about AI and machine learning is that we're starting to be able to do these bigger experiences and stay within budgets. So, a lot of people say that it's going to kill jobs and that kind of thing, but I feel like actually, at least in this space, in spatial computing and AR, AR, VR, that it's actually going to increase opportunities, because now I could sell more projects and bring on more developers to do those projects, because I can stay within those marketing budgets. Because working on the cutting edge, it's always expensive, and it's always the select few. Usually the biggest companies are the ones that get to do those. And I think it's also going to democratize the, smaller businesses, mid-sized businesses can now offer these same experiences to not only their customers, but also one of the biggest use cases that we found besides sales visualization is like corporate and enterprise training. So I know one of the airlines here in town did a proof of concept and ended up rolling it out to their ramp agents. So it's the employees that are running the or loading the baggage onto the plane. They're going around, they're doing safety checks, they're removing the chalk blocks from behind the tires, you know, they're guiding the plane in, stuff like that, that now, instead of them actually going on the tarmac, being trained, you know, on a real environment, the plane, slowing down processes, you know, that kind of stuff, potentially making mistakes. They're now able to run through a virtual version of that, of their job, and basically they can go through as many times as they want to. You can add different tests in there to, you know, did they pick up this piece of trash that was on there that could have potentially punctured the tire, you know, that kind of thing. Really making sure they catch that kind of stuff in a virtual safe environment versus putting them in the real world in a potentially dangerous situation. And then other than spatial and machine learning, LiDAR has really been a big, really big, and I think it's, you know, as it gets more prevalent, I know it's, you know, it's on, like I've personally been using it for the iPad and iPhone that has it, but as it starts getting added to these headsets, it just maps the precision at which it can get measurements and the true detail of the space and all the different point cloud positioning elements that it gives you. I think that's also the next big one, that as that gets more incorporated, that we're just going to get better and better tracking and overall awareness.
Yes, so again, thank you for joining us here and sharing your insights and perspective on this tech, which is relatively very new, but we got to learn a lot of insights from you. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Namaskaram.